council, like many countries formed such councils. So those, Afghanistan one is also one of those. And this come to exist by our former president, Hamid Karzai. When he was in election, he announced that he's gonna form a council of peace in year 2009, and after a year, through a big forum of almost 1,600 people representing all the part of the country, this council start to get shape and start working. But it was not by itself. It has a secretariat, and with the role of more make it happen. So, but the council majority was represented by political leaders, religious leaders, and also a number of civil society representatives and tribal leaders. The context we came from is very, very a traditional country. It is not modern, so modern. The modern with the definition of modernism, it's not, it's still there. The peace process still exists in my country, but with a lot of challenges. So, and they hope that one day they bring peace and stability in the country. I'm sharing some of my heart words with you, but I put it in writing, so if I read it from the paper, so then this is only because of English, which is not my first language. Coexisting on the heart is the new civilization theory. The recent human progress and development cannot tolerate old style of progress in the cost of violation to the human rights of individuals and nations. Heart is big enough to accommodate its entire residents, creatures' needs and desires, as long as we promote coexistence, peace with justice, respect diversity, discourage greediness and selfishness, and particularly among ones who raise their voice for social justice. We should walk our talks if we want a positive change to enable win-win to all and make Canada as a role model for the rest of the world, as a multicultural country which promote love and peace on the earth. As I mentioned, this Reconciliation and Truth and Reconciliation Commission or Council already established in 21st century in 42 countries. So this gave a message of things are not fine. 42 countries is a big number. They exist like this 42 countries from Africa to Asia, from Europe to South and North America. They did not exist accidentally. They exist in result of hundreds and thousands of individual days and nights hard work, who were backed by their people to acknowledge the past human wrongdoing and to improve the present and future, to reconcile and encourage coexistence as new civilization theory. Aboriginal people are an asset in Canada history as a human who explored the worlds. I mean, they were the first who explored the worlds. Had courage, mind, talent, resilience, and love for humankind and nature. They explored the world with do no harm strategy. They do deserve to live as an equal human without discrimination as Canadian citizens. I'm just giving a snapshot of United Nations Declaration on Human Rights of Indigenous People, which was adopted on 13 September 2007 with a majority of 144 countries, which is a big number. And the declaration set out the individuals and collective rights to indigenous people, as well as the rights to culture, identity, language, employment, health, education, and other issues. The declaration is structured as United Nations resolution with 23 preambles clauses and 46 articles. I mean, this declaration was just the struggle of 25 years of indigenous people that they work out for 25 years that made it as a document. I'm mentioning this about this United Nations Declaration because it is a global acknowledgement for the cause of indigenous people. The goal of the declaration is to encourage countries to work alongside indigenous people to solve global issues like development, multicultural democracy, and decentralization. And this is the voice of 370 million indigenous. It's a big number. If you go through all preambles and all the articles of the declaration, you will be surprised how beautifully it is narrated. But for me, as one human on the earth, I love these preamble words the way they are narrated. However, I would like it more if we do translate it to action by programs, projects which change the life of individuals and communities. Because we are all community represented. This is very important. Beautiful papers, beautiful things. This is the declaration. If people are interested, they can check for the copies of them. And already Michael mentioned about the call for action in 2015. And they have, with all these 94 articles, they ask for child welfare, education, language and culture, health, justice. And this is divided in two parts with legacy and reconciliation. I'm an Afghan woman, come from like similar context with 40 years of struggling as a child and then teenager and then adult mom and mother. A mother and also a worker working for a grassroots organization, Afghan Women Network, because I'm one of the founder of a small organization, and I'm very happy that I see our members now is a voice at the United Nations level and all globally. So that network made themselves known by everybody and raised the voice of women of Afghanistan. And they had a very, very peaceful movement. They didn't went through a very, very aggressive, hard actions. They just, the good action, we work and we put like the seeds with the ethic of do not harm and make alliance. We made a big number of alliance. And we also encourage the indigenous community organization, the churches, the mosques, wherever communities who are thinking the same, that social justice is must. And without justice, we cannot have peace. So why we should not promote peace as like what we are getting out of these all conflicts, all militarization, it will not take us anywhere. Maybe a number of people get rich and richer, but the rest of people will live in miseries. So my suggestion to them is that they should expand their network. All of us should be member of supporter of them to ensure that the native people, the First Nation, they live in peace and they should have all rights that any other of us have. Like some of us might less, some more, but all of us should have the rights that we enjoy. We should enjoy that I'm a human and I'm satisfied with what I have. So as Chris is here and he's a strong supporter of me as a newcomer, who really made for me possible to be part of the Center for Community Learning and Development, and we have this, luckily, this Global Citizenship Network. If any other friends here, they have more questions, Chris is here also to answer, and our other members, we have Jennifer, we have Lisa back-sitting, we have Mariam, who really are, since September, we are conducting our meeting, they are here with us and they are supporting us. And we met with Father Bert, and I really admire his support for the cause of First Nation. We also had some community, a small working group in support of the indigenous people. And if colleagues are willing to, if friends here are willing to join that that working group, they can register their names with Chris, and everybody now know Chris as a hero. So all of us, we could be heroes here, and we could change the life of our citizen men and women of Canada. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Chris, for inviting me. I'm not used to talking except in churches, so you'll forgive me if this sounds like a sermon. The work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is now over, but the work of Canadians and Canada has just begun. And that's why we wanted to speak with you today. As Michael said, in the 1880s, the Canadian government instituted a policy of residential schools, and it was what they called an aggressive way of civilizing young Native children. And as Michael said, it was to take the Indian out of the Indian. And this was based on an assumption that what Europeans had, the European culture and the European way of living and the European religion was better than the native way of living and the native culture. That attitude of superiority and haughtiness. Now, I wasn't personally involved in the residential schools. My father came to Canada from a French colony in 1920, and my mother's family